So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Gary. I'm here at MedSchoolCoach, and today we're joined by Dr. Kachiu Lee, Director of Direct Med Advising at MedSchoolCoach, and Laura Baldasare, one of our prized advisors. So our topic for tonight is High School to Pre-Med, the Common App Cheat Sheet for Aspiring Doctors. And I'm assuming since you're here, that's you. All right, so I see we have our presentation up on the screen ready to go. So without any further ado, Dr. Kachiu Lee and Laura Baldasare.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kachiu, do you want to just say hi and introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. And honestly, thank you everyone for being here with us this evening. And I'm so impressed that, everyone hails from all the different corners of the United States, as well as multiple countries outside of the US. So I'm going to keep it brief because I want to turn it over to Laura as soon as possible so that we can have as much time to talk about this pre-med to or high school to pre-med path as much as possible. So my name is Dr. Lee. I am a dermatologist based in Philadelphia. I went to Northwestern's BSMD program, spent a significant time at Brown University for my dermatology residency, did my fellowship at Harvard at Mass General, and then went back to Brown where I was a faculty member in the medical school there. And my specialty as a physician advisor is to help students with their BSMD journey. Laura?
Yeah, hi, and so nice to see everybody. Very exciting. My name is Laura Baldasare. I'm a college advisor. I've been doing this for some 20 years now. So I'm entering my 21st year. So it's something that is very close to my heart that I know a lot about. And every single student, every single one of you is your own special person who is starting this journey or is in the middle of this journey. And there is a college for you. There are many colleges for you. And the Common App, whatever stage of the journey you're on right now, it seems to be, the mystical gateway to everything. I'm going to demystify a little bit tonight, I hope, but it is the main gateway through which we begin this journey in some ways or in some official ways. It is not. It has a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces, but after all this time, I see the practicality of it, and I see the reasoning for it being the way that it is. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit. And you are by no means ever going to remember everything I'm going to tell you tonight. But take it as a placeholder. Some information you'll keep, some information certainly you'll be able to get through MedSchoolCoach or however, we're going to disseminate this. But let's start about the Common App. Common application, we hear that all the time. What it is, very basically, it's one application, a single application with 5 or 6 different parts to it that you can use to fill out all of the main information that all of the colleges are going to want to know, some of your basic stuff. It is used by over 900 colleges and universities, some that are even outside of the US. So it is sort of like a clearing center to put all of the information that everyone is going to be looking for. The schools are a very varied list. They're the large universities, they're the smaller liberal arts schools, they're private schools, they're public schools, they're engineering colleges, they're liberal arts schools, they're all there. So it's not that it's defined by one particular type of college or one particular type of student. It goes live every year on August 1st for that incoming senior year. But that doesn't mean it's not there now for you. It is. You can start your Common application at any time. It's at www.commonapp.org. And you start an account. And at any point in time, you can start filling in some of your basic information. When it comes your time, it's your application year, you can move all of the information that you've put in there. You can continue to update it, but you get it starting fresh for the seniors on August 1st. lot of different moving targets with application deadlines. Again, the Common App is going to be one place where you can find out some of that information. And what do we talk about different deadlines? Different schools have different deadlines. It would be wonderful if everybody did the same thing, but they don't. Big surprise. But again, this is a clearinghouse of information for you. Some of the main things that you want to keep in mind when you think about applying to college, the three big ones we hear about are early decision, early action, and regular decision. When it comes to the BSMD programs or other special programs like that, there are even other deadlines that whoever you're working with or the schools themselves that you're interested in will let you know about that. You will do, another thing we hear about the Common App, and then we hear about the Common App essay. Okay, the Common App essay is one main essay that you will write that will go to all of the colleges that you apply to through the Common App. It is not your only essay, but it is the one that's the same for every one of your schools. We will talk about supplemental essays in a little bit, but for right now, just know that there's that main one, and that's what we have to deal with. There's also a whole financial aid process, which is a separate thing, which is not part of the Common App. The Common App is free for you to use, but every single college is also going to have their own application processing fee that you pay through the Common App. All right, again, you're getting a lot of information. And you don't have to remember it all at once. So let's go on to our next page here. And we're going to recognize that this is actually usually the best way to apply to colleges because it is the one that is most widely used. There are a couple of others, but this is the main one. Some of the things that are so great about this one is if you're a first-time applicant, if you're a transfer applicant, you can apply to multiple colleges all at once, which is terrific. Also, the Common App essay gives you a number of different prompts to select from. So that's also different from some other kinds of applications that you might use. And that variety is good because it really helps students select one that is going to be the most meaningful for them. You are allowed to put all of your information into this common application. But something else that's very good about applying through this is that the Common App takes a much more holistic look at the whole package that you're presenting. Obviously, your statistics are there, your scores, your classes, all of those kinds of things. But they also want to know more about you in terms of your activities, your extracurriculars, your interests. Your essays tell a lot about you. So the Common App becomes, again, a very holistic view. And that's very important because we know, we're in SAT land again. We're in, GPAs and APs and all of the courses and all of the things that we want to do, but never lose sight of the fact of you. Okay, you are more than your stats. You are more than your courses. You are more than all of these other things. You are the only you on this planet. And so what the Common App helps us do through our essays, through the things that we present, is introduce you. And that is the biggest thing. That's very, very important, I think. If we can go on to the next slide, a few other features to know and maybe some myth busters here. Other colleges do not know what other colleges you're applying to. When you go on to the Common App, when you come up with a school list that you want to work with, you can load your schools onto the Common App. So they're all in one place. That's helpful because it's also sort of organizing your information. But at the same time, that Common App will often get linked to your guidance counselors at school or your college counselors at school, and they will automatically be able to see the colleges that you're looking at, what the due dates are, where you are in the process, all of that. But it is only for you and your school. with one exception. Before too long, if you haven't already, as soon as you start to be even a sophomore, definitely a junior, you start to get all kinds of mail from colleges, like colleges you've never even heard of. Um, because you are on mailing lists, once you sign up for your account for the Common App, they have your basic information, and they certainly will start to reach out with you with things. You want to be very careful about what you pay attention to at this point. If it's a school that you're interested in, you pay attention, otherwise not so much. But the colleges may see, oh, you indicated that you're interested in us. Okay, let's reach out to you if we're interested in you. So that kind of thing can happen, but other colleges do not know. Colleges also do not share detailed information that they may receive about you with other colleges. They don't do that. There's a lot of privacy built into all of this, and you'll see that as we go through, or as you go through the application at the appropriate time. All of the waivers that you have to sign saying this one can get information, this one can't. You are very much in charge of that. So you're not going to be worried about the information that you put there. So that's kind of important to know. Colleges will sometimes ask you where else you're applying, sometimes on their supplements. So, what do I mean by that? You have your major common application, but then every single school that you're going to apply to has its own separate supplements. And they're going to ask you some additional questions. They are going to give you some additional essays for sure. But that is when we start to narrow down into what the specific schools might want to know about you versus the big general piece. Okay. Again, keep in mind always as we talk, if you have specific questions that come up, I very well may be answering them as I go. But if not, you can always enter that information. We talked about the fact that the new Common App opens August 1st. You don't have to wait until then. You can get started anytime and transfer over. Usually, middle of your junior year is a good time to start working on some of that because you have enough information that you know, and the rest you can fill in as you go. Okay, our next slide is going to show you the main components of the Common Application. And there are 6 main ones. The profile, which is basically where do you live, what's your phone number, a lot of that basic kind of stuff. Family is, they're going to ask you information about your parents. They're going to ask you information about your siblings for a whole lot of different reasons, but they're also interested. Some schools might be interested in legacy. They might want to know where your parents went to school, how much education. Sometimes that falls into scholarship kind of stuff. Many different things that they're going to ask you that it is in you're sort of required to answer. It doesn't matter where your parents went to school. If they went to school here or they went to school in a different country, all those colleges are there. So that's what that's about. Education is going to be asking you things about your school. That's where they're going to be asking you about your GPA. They're asking you about the courses you take. They're going to ask you about any honors or awards you might have, that sort of thing. Testing, obviously, is going to be about SAT test scores, ACT test scores, AP scores, any kinds of information. Are you testing? Will you be testing? Are you still testing? All of that. Activities is a little bit like the Common App resume. It will give you an opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit more detail about each of these, but the activities will give you an opportunity to share only 10 of your opportunities, and you want to be selective when we get to those. Because many of us come to all of this with a resume that's 3 pages long. The college resume itself that some schools may ask for only want 1 page. So it gets very, very slimmed down, even more so a little bit here, but it's a chance at a glance for college to get an overall idea of the different kinds of things you're interested in that you've been involved in. And then that writing section, that is where your actual Common App essay is going to go. So let's go on and let's talk about that school list a little bit. On the Common Application, you can apply to up to 20 schools. That sounds a little crazy, but in this day and age, actually, I have all my students have 20 schools on their lists. It is competitive out there. Absolutely, we know that. At the same time, I'm going to remind you that there's only one you, and it's all about finding the schools that are right for you and that you are right for, but also that are right for you. So those 20 schools, typically we apply to 20 schools, we're going to probably get acceptances maybe at 7 or 8 if they're the right schools that we're applying to. If we only apply to 8, you may get 1 or 2 and you're going to be sweating out those 2. So 20 is a good number to work with. Not too long ago, Common App limited it to 20 because students were like putting on 20 and then another 20 and then another 20, and that you don't need to do. Absolutely. They've picked 20 because they recognize that's a good solid number to have enough safeties and targets and reaches, meaning schools that you're in the sweet spot for, schools that are a little bit above where you may be right now, but it's something to reach for, and the safeties, the ones that you've got a pretty sure feeling about. So you're almost looking at 7, 7, and 7 in a way. If you have more than 20 schools on your list, one of your first tasks is to get rid of some of them, because every one of those schools, and I'm talking about once you've done your research and you really decided the schools you really are interested in, every one of those schools is also going to have 2, 3, 5, 7, 8 supplemental essays that will go along with them. So you have to be cognizant of the amount of time you have to spend and, really be picky about what you're looking for. There will be a tab, a college search tab on the Common App, which will allow you then to look for the schools and add them to your Common App. That is not set in stone. Throughout the process, until you send an application to a school, schools can come off, schools can go on. So don't be worried about you're not committing yourself to anything until you actually hit submit on an application. Stats that are being asked for on the Common Application. Under the education part, they are going to ask you about your GPA. They give you an opportunity to give a weighted GPA or a non-weighted GPA. If your school uses a weighted GPA, you should list that. You always want to list the highest possible weighted grade point average you can achieve and select the weighted option and put what your highest one is. That can be changed. You might put something in as a placeholder. You might wait until you're actually ready to send out, because they're going to be including GPAs all the way through your first quarter of your senior year. So, 11th grade is where we really want to be building that GPA as much as possible, but you have the first quarter of senior year to keep working on that. A weighted GPA scale typically goes up to a 5, but that also takes into consideration the difficulty of the courses that you take that fall into the weighted category. Remember, I said holistic. They're not just looking at numbers on a sheet. They understand, the admissions people at these schools fully understand what goes behind the information that they're seeing. So you can certainly trust that. If you have chosen more challenging courses, you can sometimes have a GPA that's higher than the regular 4.0, and they will understand what that means too. Colleges don't particularly care which one you report, so you should always choose the higher one because that would give your application a boost. Okay, when we talk about APs, so we take sometimes, some of us, a lot of APs. Sometimes the amount of APs we take is driven by what our school offers. So this is important to know also. When your guidance counselor sends the colleges the information they need to send, the transcripts, the letters of recommendation, that sort of thing, they also have to send something called the school report. And the school report is exactly that. It explains to a college what this high school is like. Maybe this high school is in a very small rural area and only offers 2 APs. That's all that they're able to offer. Maybe another school is in the heart of LA and, has like 52,000 APs you could take if you wanted to. So when the admissions people are looking at this and they're saying student A only has one AP or two APs, and this one has five, they're not going to judge you against that. That's not what they're looking at. That school report tells them that this school had two APs and this student took both of them. They would have taken more if they could have, but they couldn't. This school offered 12. This student only took 3. Okay. So everything is looked at through a view of the possibilities and what's offered and all of that. APs are not an automatic, I don't have to take a class in college anymore. It's not like that. You do the best you can, and the rigor of the work that you're taking counts. You only are going to report on your Common App scores of 4 or 5. If you've got an AP and you've gotten a 2 or a 3, okay, that's fine. You took that very hard course and you got a grade in it. But that's not an AP grade that the colleges are necessarily going to be interested in looking at. If you are applying to top schools, you need to get a 5 on your APs in order for that AP to help you when it comes time for admissions. You are always going to need at least a 4 for you to get credit at college for a course like that. Okay? Again, that does not mean that if you've taken a really challenging AP class and you've gotten a 3, that's okay. They look at it and they see the rigor on your transcript of the classes that you've chosen. But you're shooting for 4s and 5s here for sure. Okay, so, and again, what I say down here is very important. Your AP scores are not a make or break. I have had so many students who are stellar in, so many ways, and they lose sleep every night because they got 1-3 on AP. I'm like, stop it already. Stop it. Nobody's going to care about that. We care about every little thing because we know how competitive it is, but you don't, not every little thing. You do your best. You do your best. You hit all these points to the best. Perfect. Okay. Activities.
Laura,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but we are also getting a lot of questions about the IB program. Could you
Oh,
also
yes,
talk about that since we're talking about
absolutely.
APs?
IB is comparable in a way. IB is definitely considered to be, and I'm not comparing stuff here, but IB is an even more advanced program. If you have IB classes, they're still looking at scores and grades, but it almost is its own entity, if you will. If you've taken on an IB class or an IB graduation, if you're graduating with an IB diploma, that definitely is putting you in a different area. That coursework is very complicated. Many times, you have to take 2 years of a course. You take what's available to you for you, but you also take what's available for you that is right for you. You don't take an AP or an IB just for the sake of taking it. I worked with a student today. We were looking at her course selection for next year, and colleges want to see that you're taking some rigorous courses. She's not the best in English. I don't take the AP in English, take it in something else. Protect your GPA at the same time. This is also why it is important to work with, I can't work with all of you, I wish I could, but it's important to work with folks who know what you're bringing to the table and what balances out other things. Because you don't have to be perfect in everything. You don't have to be perfect in anything, quite frankly, but you have to be doing your best and you have to be out there. And so an IB curriculum is a big deal. It's good. APs, if your school doesn't offer that, or if your school does offer it, but you've chosen not to take it, but you're taking APs, all of this is important. Okay, so that's what I would say to you there. The thing about, again, IB is sometimes they're 2-year classes. So, you don't necessarily, your grades in your first, first year, second one is the one that really matters, something like that. Okay, we can get more information to you on this. It's a whole entity in and of itself. Let's talk about activities for a bit. Something that's important for you to know wherever you are right now, colleges do not want to see that you've done 35 different activities for 3 months each. No, they would much rather see that you have done 3 or 4 really meaningful activities for a duration of a year or 2 or 3, or that you've worked your way to a point where you're an officer in a club, or where you started a club or something like that. Common App gives you an opportunity to give information about 10 activities. If you have more than 10 that you feel are really important to you, you can also create a college resume. Some of the colleges will ask on supplements, if you have one, you can upload it. And if you don't have one, you don't, but you want to be able to have it if you do. Um, Activities, again, are for the college to get to know who you are. And when you look at it, there's a drop down box that shows all the different things that they consider to be activities. And you know what? It's your responsibility to walk the family dog every day. That's a job. That's a responsibility. Or I take care of grandma during the afternoon sometimes. That's a responsibility. That's an extracurricular. It's taking your time. It's something that matters. They would rather see a bit of a cross section of a few different things. And as I'm noting here, sports counts, clubs count, community service, volunteering, all of that. Be careful though, this is very important. Your activities should not, because they ask you to break down how many hours a week. If you're giving them more than 24 or 30 hours a week, they're going to think you're making the whole thing up, because it's very difficult, along with sleeping and classes and homework and all of that kind of thing. So more is not always better. They won't believe you if you tell them you've got 30 hours a week of extracurricular. And if in fact you do, that might be a little too much. Something to think about, I think. Okay, lots more to know about. Each one of these sheets is like a presentation in its own. So we're giving you the quick down and dirty about a lot of this stuff. You'll have plenty of opportunity to learn more and more in more depth. The Common App, the supplements, I mentioned these before. This is very important. Only one Common App essay is required, but many colleges individually are going to ask you to write many more supplement essays, some of 50 words, some of 200, some 300, some 800. They give you an opportunity to get into much more depth about certain things that you've experienced in your life, or things that you're interested in, or personal qualities, all of these kinds of things. Important to remember that whatever program you ultimately want to get into, or whatever path you want to follow, the first thing you need to do is be accepted as an undergrad at the school you want to take this program at. They're not going to look at you as, oh, here is someone applying to our undergraduate school for the BSMD program. It doesn't work that way. The people that are looking at your initial application are the undergraduate people. They want to know that you want to go to this school as an undergrad. And then if we have the qualifications, and if you indicate the interest, then they may pass you on to the other committees. But right now, it's about you. And it's important to recognize that the admissions people are doing far more than just looking at your application and deciding if this works or it doesn't work. They're putting a jigsaw puzzle together. They have to put together an entire freshman class. And that means a mixture. If you ever worked on a jigsaw puzzle, you got to have so many sky pieces, so many grass pieces, so many animal pieces, all of the different pieces that are going to make the entire kaleidoscope of the picture, right? So also know you are going to get admitted to a lot of schools. You are also going to get turned down. I hate when a student says to me, they rejected me. They did not reject you. Nobody rejects you. They said, I only had one more jigsaw puzzle piece left. And this one had 2 empty spots, and this one had 1, and this is the one that had to fit. That's what it is, right? So in these essays, you're given an opportunity to share more about who you are. That's what they want to know. But I also want to tell you that those supplements are equally important for you as someone who is interviewing that college, right? It's not just that they're looking to see, are you right for us? You're looking to say, I think I like you, but are you really right for me? And I use this example. I'm going to take a moment just to show this to you. If you look at 3 key schools, let's say Duke or Brown or Rochester, and you look at their supplemental essays that tells you everything you need to know about that school and how it's going to connect for you. Duke, amazing school. Academics, academics, academics. How much research, how much science, how much this, how much that. Tell us about this, that, the other thing. That's where their main focus is. Rochester, every single one of their supplemental essays ends with, how are you going to take this education and make the world a better place? How are you going to make this country a better place? How are you going to make your community a better place? That shows you something about Rochester's heart. Is that where your heart is? If you talk about Brown, amazing school. One of the few schools whose supplemental essay is what brings you joy. They care about that. Brown is a very holistic school. You know, architect of your own education, educate the whole person. Is that what you care about? Or do you want to do research, research, research? So those supplemental essay questions are huge pieces of information for you. I thought I wanted to go to that school. Maybe I have to relook at what their values are compared to my values, right? You get to pick also what's right for you, not just what they think is right for them. If we go to the next slide, this is talking a little bit about strategizing. The Common App is going to give you in very broad strokes what a given school is looking for. Your job is to go onto the school's website and really understand what those application requirements are, because they can be very different for every school. And by the way, just in view of the thing I just said to you, I always tell every single one of my students, before you start doing any research, go find what the school's mission statement is. What is their mission statement and what are their values? And does that match to yours? That's important. So you have to take the time to make sure the dates are right, that you have everything that needs to be sent into them, right? They're all on the Common App. They're going to all need that, but some of them may need additional things. You find a lot of that on the supplements, right? And as you're looking at all of this, when I say ask yourself some questions, you continue to ask. You don't want to go to a school because of the school's name. You want to know a lot more about that school before you decide that they're worthy of you. Look at it that way. You start to search for colleges based on what you think you might be interested in, based on where you think geographically you might want to be. I always like my students to keep as open a mind as possible in the beginning, because we never know exactly. And you start to add schools to a list. And then you start to narrow your list. And then you start to sort your list. Sort your list how? Well, this is in a city. This is in a small place. This has a great neuroscience program. This has a great cardio program. This has great food. You're going to be eating there for 7 years. All of that kind of thing. Use some time to really think about these schools. You're not applying to colleges because of their names. That could be a starting point, but you need to know a lot more about them than that. And when I say balance your list, you need to have a mixture of targets and safeties and reaches. And using your support network, you know a lot of people in your lives. A lot of them went to college. Ask them where'd they go, what they like about it, what didn't they like about it. Interview people. Get as much information as you can. Okay, what else here? You're going to make a list of your target schools. The target schools are the ones where you're there. when not maybe necessarily right now if you're in ninth grade, but in 11th grade, if you're talking about mid-year, junior year, are you about where you need to be in terms of the stats that they're looking for, in terms of their values, and do you fit? And not do you, I don't mean do you fit, I mean, do you fit who they are? Does that work for you? If you've got a good chance, that's a target school. And how do you know it? There you go, research. You can't get away from the research. I have had many students will say to me, I'm in that mix right now because people are getting their answers. I got accepted to these 8 schools. Which one should I go to? Oh, no, 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 no. I'll help you sort. I'll help you think. I'll help you plan, but I'm not going to tell you which school you should go to. That has to be what you're going to answer. So that's by research. Reach schools are the schools that, if I took the SAT one more time and I got another 200 points, that might put me over. Or I'm so close. Maybe if my essays are really amazing, they might consider me. Everybody should have at least 5 reach schools. You deserve that. And lots of times they come through for you. You might go on a wait list, you might be deferred, but you also might get them. Safety schools are the ones that, again, you're like above, right? I have a 1400 SAT. That seems to be where I'm netting out. I really like this school. They want a 1250. That's a safety for you. But also recognize that the safety schools are the ones that are also most likely going to try to tempt you with money, which is a good thing, so we have to sort of take that into consideration as well. Testing is the next thing. We've gone back and forth since COVID with no tests, no tests. They're back. They're back. Dartmouth started it off about a month or so ago when they said, that's it. We are bringing back the SAT or the ACT. And that is becoming once again a defining line for the selective schools, as to where you need to be. They are finding, and they've done research, and I have to get more information for you about that, but the research seems to be that they are finding that the test scores are still remaining as a key indicator of how well a student is going to do at a certain school. So can't get away from it. It has to be part of your plan. You should be, there's a sweet spot for this too. You don't want to start prepping for this in 6th grade, that's for sure. You can burn out on this stuff quickly. I always suggest that my students take their first test in December of their junior year. Get that first one out of the way. Let's see where we are. And then you're going to go on and take a second one probably in maybe January or March, and get a third. I like to get everything done if possible by the end of junior year so you can start focusing on all this other stuff, right? But these are the things, prep, 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 prep. Don't think for a second you don't need to. You do, especially in, when you're talking about selective schools and the fact that many of them will use that still as a first bar because they're getting upwards of 50,000 applications a year and they don't have the manpower to go through that. So they often will use a certain number as a cutoff point, and then they'll start looking more specifically after that. And the other thing, and I want to wrap up soon because I want to leave room for all these wonderful questions for Dr. Lee and myself, but you see the one there that says study vocabulary? Okay, read. If you're not doing already, read, read, read. I cannot tell you enough how important it is to read. Vocab pops up all the way through these tests. You're probably doing a lot of, reading, obviously, if you're doing AP classes or IB classes, but you're doing academic reading. So not all of the words that you may find coming to you are going to be specific to the academic subjects you're studying. Vocabulary, I cannot stress enough how many students get 6 questions wrong in a row because they don't know the words. So that's my little pointer on that one. Just quickly here, again, you'll see when it comes to extracurricular activities, stay with something for a while, get to a place where you can maybe have a leadership position. That's important. Jobs, you know, they like to see students. I have a lot of students that have great stuff and they've never worked. So, what are the schools looking at? Is there responsibility here? Is there someone who's dependable? Is there someone who can interact with other people? Are they team players? There's lots of information they get from this stuff. Um, the next one, something to be thinking about, 10th grade, 11th grade, you are going to need 2 letters of recommendation. And you want to start um, developing relationships with some of your teachers. You want to go into the sciences, you know, develop a relationship with a chemistry teacher, a bio teacher, all of those sorts of things. Those are important things too. Um, Let teachers know, what you're interested in doing. And, teachers love to help. That's why they're teachers. So it was one of the reasons anyway. I think that I'm going to kind of buzz through the next couple of slides because they're a little bit more detail oriented and we've really talked about a lot of this stuff. And if it's okay with you, I think I would rather um, hear some questions. And Dr. Lee and I would rather maybe hear some questions now. But I think first she's going to talk to you about this slide.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think that was super helpful to kind of learn about the different aspects of the Common App as well as how to approach each of those sections. We hope that this has been an interesting presentation for you, and I know there's a lot of questions. So if you feel like you need more individualized attention or have specific questions that we weren't able to get to tonight, it would be great if you could book a meeting with one of our advisors by scanning this QR code. I think what's really unique about MedSchoolCoach is that we have over 80 physicians who all have experience on medical school admissions committees. So we've been on both sides. We've been the student that was applying when we were applying to med school ourselves, as well as the person who was on the admissions committee who was picking the students that would become the next class in each of our respective medical schools. So we've really seen what admissions committees look for in potential medical school applicants. And through this process, we've helped thousands and thousands of students get into both undergrads as well as BSMD programs and medical school. Thank you so much, Laura. With that, I'm going to just ask you a few questions that came up during during your talk. I think there are a lot of questions about the value of taking community college classes or dual credit classes. Could you address that?
Sure. A lot has to do first of all, it's a very individualized answer, because it depends a lot on what we're looking at for the student. We know how expensive college can be. There's also an entire, bunch of stuff to talk about in terms of financial aid and how to get help with some of that. Many students will opt to, and typically it's a student who is not where they need to be, perhaps with their GPA or with their courses or with a variety of different things. And they feel that that would weaken their application and therefore will go and take courses at a community college for less tuition. And also because it then gives you an opportunity to build up a college transcript, which is more valuable than a high school transcript because it's looked at in an entirely different way. So when I talk to students about that, and I've done that in the last few weeks with a couple of students, it's really either the financial piece or it is that they're not where they need to be yet. And what I'll often say to them is, it depends on what grade you're in. It depends on, how much time you have to go before you're going to start applying. You can always apply to colleges. The other thing about community schools, most colleges are going to, it's early action, it's an 11-1 or a 12-1 deadline. If it's regular decision, it's usually a 1-1. If it's a community college, the deadline is usually in April of your senior year. So you can apply to your colleges, and based on what you find, if you're not getting in where you want to go, then you can always go that route. But I find most of the time students do get into the schools that they want to get into. So I don't necessarily want someone to immediately look at that as an off ramp. I'd rather, that you really sit down with somebody and look at what you have and where you are and where you can go. So it's a very individual question. It's hard to give a flat answer for everyone.
Mhm. And Laura, can you talk a little bit more about demonstrated interest? Specifically, the question is, does this apply to higher tier colleges, as well as is it ever possible for demonstrated interest to hurt a student's application?
So demonstrated interest, I don't see a way that it can ever hurt an application. I want to remind you that no school knows what you're doing with another school, first of all. There are some schools who care more about it and others that don't. You'll find that on the Common App, when you're going through some of the supplemental questions, some schools will say, have you come to visit us? Because they do care whether you did or not. If you're saying to a school, you're my number one or two or three choice, and they say, when were you here? And you're like, well, I haven't really gone to see you yet. Um, but less than, schools less and less ask supplemental questions about why do you want to go to this school. Almost every school used to ask that, and they were looking for you to really be able to hone in very tightly on showing how much you knew about that school. And that is always important. Schools have egos too. But I find in the last 5, 6, 7 years, that has shifted a lot more to, we want to learn about you. We want to know about you. Schools of these the highly selective schools already know why you want to go there. They already know, you know, who they are and why. They are really much more focused now on finding the students that they feel are 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 going to help move the college along in a certain kind of a way, if that makes sense. Um, I think of colleges as people sometimes. When you have to write about why do I want to go to this school, don't start off because it's in Austin and I love Texas. You'd be surprised how many kids do that. How many kids write about how beautiful the campus is, or how what a great feeling they got, with the school spirit. That's why I say you start off by learning about what a school's mission statement is and what their values are. So, demonstrated interest to me is when you are writing to a school, I'm going to say Rochester again, and say something like, I happen to know how important changing the world is to Rochester. And that's important to me too. And let me tell you why. And that's why I want to be at a school like this, where I can really, you know, do that, achieve that. Now you are demonstrating interest. Demonstrating interest isn't, I went to visit you 3 times, or, I know about all these courses, or I know, do you know the school? And tell them what you know. And then they know you spent time. That's what any of us want in a relationship, right? That someone spends time to really get to know us. That counts.
Could you also talk about the different pathways to medical school, both the traditional route as well as the BSMD route? And I'm happy to talk about the
I
BSMD
was just
route.
going to say, Dr. Lee, I'm
Yeah,
going to hand that one right off to you.
yeah. Do you want to talk about the traditional way at all, or do you want me to kind of
Well,
briefly go
sure.
over
I
that?
mean, the traditional way is, when I have students that are going to go the BSMD route, we go one way. Then we may be looking at schools. And for me, that makes those the reach schools for those kids. The sort of target schools become the ones that have the good pre-med programs that we can find schools that will work with that. I'm also always looking at schools that have affiliations with medical schools or that have affiliations, but you're still going in under the pre-med. You're still, getting very often the benefit of research opportunities that'll be available to you. So and professors that'll be available to you and doctors that'll be available and opportunities. So that typically for me is the mid-range, and the safety schools I tend to look then for colleges that have the best bio programs or neuroscience programs or things that students want to study undergrad.
And in comparison with the BSMD route, the difference is that as a high school senior, you're applying to both the undergraduate school as well as the medical school at the same time. And so that means that you get acceptance, hopefully, to both the undergrad and the medical school. What that means is that you have two sets of applications, and it also means that you're interviewing for the medical school as a high school senior. Much of what BSMD programs look for is very, very similar to what Laura just reviewed on the presentation about the Common App. But in addition, BSMD programs really want to see a very significant interest in medicine and experience in medicine. You're not going to get very far if you say, I want to be a doctor because I love watching Grey's Anatomy and the doctors on TV are very heroic, right? Instead, if you have an application where you say, I want to be a doctor because I've been in the hospital, I've shadowed, I've volunteered, I've worked with these vulnerable populations. I know what it is like to get sick. I know what it's like to hold someone's hand and be there. That's what will make a much better application to show your passion for medicine. I think we still have time for a few more questions. Laura, there's a few questions about homeschooling. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I'm working with a number of students now. Well, I always have, but so homeschooling is just a little bit different in some ways. Um, So first of all, some of you still are applying to schools through Common App. You still are applying. The times that you can graduate are sometimes different. They're not always, I'm going to graduate in May or June of a year. I have some students that are homeschooled that are actually going to be applying for spring semesters because they're going to be ready in time and they're going to go in the spring. Um, so the colleges are becoming more and more used to seeing some of this. They still are going to want SAT. They're still going to want GPA. I mean, that sometimes, it involves working with the people at the school that you're dealing with to help you arrive at the GPA that they'll be looking at. It's not always tracked the same way when it's homeschooled as it is. At the end of the day, the college still wants to have a GPA and they still want to have a transcript and they still want to understand all of that. There are also different procedures often in terms of getting letters of recommendation because a lot of the classes sometimes are done online and there's not necessarily a teacher that you get to have a really good relationship with. But all of these things can be worked through and worked with. It's still putting together that resume. It's still putting together, you may not be at a place where, you're in school and so there are clubs and things that you can be involved in, but there are certainly things in the community that you can. There's certainly ways to deal with all of this, but at the end of the day, the colleges will also get a school report from the homeschool program that you've been working with. And in that way, they will be able to understand what the basis is and the foundation is. And, there's a lot of times that, I'm sorry, there's a lot of times that, we position sometimes, as a student that has done homeschooling, that's a special person in that you didn't have the crowd to go along with. You had to have your own very particular drive and discipline and thirst and all of that. It takes a lot to do all of that on your own and have a successful outcome. And, there are places on the Common, and there are places on the Common App. You have your main essay. There's also a place that says if there's been something a little bit different in your pathway of education, here's an opportunity for you to tell us about that if you'd like to. And a lot of my kids that are homeschooled will do that, and they'll share however much they want to about why they made that choice. And then also it gives them an opportunity to do that very thing, to say, as a result of this, look at the grades I've attained, look at the coursework I've done, and look at the maturity I've developed a little bit ahead of time, maybe, because I really had to learn to depend on myself, and you know, it turns into an absolutely great story. And you can apply to any school coming from homeschooling. You're still going to need your SAT, still going to need your GPA, still going to need whatever it is that the school. I have a student who had not done any honors classes in her homeschooling situation, and then decided to wait another semester and do some honors classes because she felt that she could, and she was already graduating a semester early, and so she decided to do some honors classes to just bump everything up. So there's a lot of ways to go about it.
So, with that, I wanted to thank all of our participants for staying with us to the end of this webinar and for participating in the Q&A. We didn't have a chance to go through all of the question and answers, but again, I would highly encourage you to book a consult with one of our advisors to learn a little bit more about this pre-med process, as well as the BSMB process if you're interested with that. So thank you so much. I'm going to leave this QR code up for a few more minutes so that everyone can scan it and take the link down. But again, thank you so much. And I wanted to let you know that we are definitely available to be a resource for you or for your child with this pre-med process and this BSMD process, because it can be very confusing to be kind of just thrown in to this process to almost like figure out your own way or figure out how this works on your own. And we're here to help. So thank you so much, Laura.
Yes.
I learned so much from your presentation.
And thank you. Thank every single one of you. I'm so glad that you were here. And I'm so excited for you because, wow, the next bunch of years are going to be so exciting.
Great. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.